Hello, good morning. Today in this class, I am going to share with you regarding the company rule in India. A company rule, my means British government company rule, that is called British East India Company. This company rule over the India in between 1773 to 1858. And this company just being a start in India, where we just talk about regulating act. Regulating Act of 1773, this act of great constitutional importance, as it was first step taken by British government to control and regulate the affair of East India Company in India, and it recognized for the first time the political and administrative function of company, and it also put focus for the foundation of central administration in India. There are some feature of act. It designate governor generals, governor of Bengal as the governor general of Bengal, and created an executive council of four members to assist him. The first such governor general was Lord Warren Hastings. It made the governor of Bombay, Madras presidency and subordinated to the governor general of Bengal. Unlike earlier, when the three presidency were independent of one another, it provided for the establishment of Supreme Court of Calcutta in 1774, comprising one Chief Justice and three other judges. It prohibited the servant of the company from engaging in any private trade or accepting present or bribe from the native people. It also strengthened the control of the British government over the company by requiring the court of directors, governing body of the company, to report on its revenue, civil and military affairs in India. Now next is Pitt India Act 1784. In a bid to rectify the defect of the Regulating Act 1773, the British Parliament passed the Amending Act of 1781. Also known as the Act of Settlement, the next important act was the Pitt India Act of 1784. So they are feature of the act. It distinguishes between the commercial and political function of the company, and also talk about the commercial affair of the company. This establishes the system of double government and empowers the board of control to supervise and direct all operations of the civil and military government or revenue of the British possessions in India. So this act was significant for two regions. What are the two regions in there? The first region is the territory in India were for the first time called the British possessions in India. Second region is British government was given the supreme control over the company affair and its administration in the company. Now, third Charter Act is 1833. As per this act was the final step toward the centralization of British government in India. So, feature of this act, it made the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India and vested in him all civil and military power. Second, it deprived the Governor of Bombay and Madras of their legislative power. The Governor General of India was given exclusive legislative power, that means extra legislative power, and the law made under the previous act were called as a regulation, which law made under the act were called the act. So it ended the activities of East India Company, and commercially we see the body which come purely the administrative body, those were ruling over it. Now, fourth is Charter Act 1833, attempt to introduce a system of open competitions in between the Indian people and the British people, and the exam of civil service exam has to be started. Now, Charter Act of 1853, this act was last of the series of Charter Act passed by the British Parliament. in 1853. So feature of this act, it separate the first type legislative, executive function of governor generals and the legislative wings of the council of functioning as a mini parliament and adopting the same procedures of the British parliament. Now, it also introduced the open competition systems of selection and recruitment of civil servant. And the third, the company rule allowed to retain possession of Indian territory on the trust for the British crowns. And it did not specify any particular period, unlike the previous charters, whatever we have seen there. Fourth number, it also introduced for the first time local representative in India. So Legislative Council of the 6 new legislative members of the Governor General Council, 4 members were appointed by the local people. Like you can talk about the four locations: the government, Madras, Bombay, Bengal, and Agra. Let's we talk about the Crown Rule. Crown Rule just supposed to be a start in India from 1858 to 1947. So Government of India Act 1858, that is the transformation of authority from the company rule to British government. So feature of this act, it provide Indian henceforth to be governed by the name of British Parliament, not to be the name of the British company. It ended the system of double government. It created new office Secretary of the State for India, and it established 15-member Council of India to assist the Secretary of the State of India. And fifth number, it constitute Secretary of State in Council as a body corporate and capable of the suing and being in India and England. So the Act of 1858, that is a purely transformation of power. Now, Indian Council Act of 1861, 1892, and 1909. Indian Council Act 1861 made the beginning of representative institution by associating Indian with the lawmaking process. So it thus provided the Viceroy should nominate some Indian and non-official members of his expanded council, and in 1862, Lord Canning, then Viceroy, nominating the 3 Indian to his legislative council, the Raja of Banaras, Maharaja of Patiala, and the Sardinkar Rao. So it initiated the process of decentralization of the power, and third, it also provided the establishment of new legislative council of Bengal. Now, northwestern frontier was also withdrawn, and it also empowered the viceroy to make rule and orders for the more convenient transactions of business in the council. Now, feature of this Act 1892, it increased the number of additional non-official member of the central and provincial legislative council, but maintained the official majority in them. So it increased the function of legislative council and gave them the power of discussing budget and addressing the questions of executive. And third, it provided for the nomination of some non-official member Central Legislative Council by Viceroy on the recommendation of Provincial Legislative Council. So this act made a limited and indirect provisions for the use of elections in filling of some of the non-official seat both in central and provincial legislative council. Finally, come to the 1909, the feature of Act. It considerably increased the size of legislative council, central and state level. It retained the official majority in the central legislative council, allowed the provincial legislative act. Third, number, it enlarged the deliberations of function and legislative council and both the level. Like example, member were allowed to ask the supplementary questions. Fourth, it provided the budget and so on and Societyan of Indians with the execution of Council of Viceroy and Governor Satyendra Prasad Sinha. It introduced the system of communal representation of Muslim by accepting the concept of separate electorates, thus the legalized communalism, and Lord Minto came to be known as the father of communal electorates. And it also provides the separate representation of presidency and corporation and chamber of commerce and university. And this is the act from where we can see the Bengal is divided into part. So good morning everyone. We stop here. In next video we will talk about the Government of India Act 1919. That is the act, a very exclusive way where we can start the freedom struggle along with that.